Today. We welcome back Will. Last time we were together, he shared with us his conversion, his spiritual journey from the Church of the Nazarene to the Roman Catholic Church. And today we've invited him back on. It's been maybe a year or more since that last interview, and we'll just be talking about his journey as it has moved forward over the last year. And welcome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Always glad to talk about faith.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the Lenten season, and you said that you were just on your way back from adoration. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So apologize for any road noise or anything, but yeah, I just got done with work and went to adoration. I signed up. I don't know, 2 3 months ago for to do a holy hour uh, every Wednesday from 3 to 4. So um, I really enjoy that, and yeah, it's really one of the newer practices for me that um, I guess it took me a while to. I think I talked about this last time, but it took me a while to go from the intellectual knowledge and belief of the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist, to from an intellectual level to like an actual like heart belief, um, in that. It took me quite a while to make that shift, to where I really internalize that a lot more. And since I found, well, I don't know. I don't know which came first, the chicken or the egg, but going to adoration, um, I don't know if that's what helped me feel the presence more and feel that, or if, because I started to feel it, I desired to go adore more often. But it's been really nice. I really enjoy it. It's very peaceful. It's a good way midweek for me um, to stop, meditate, pause, get some peace, feel the presence, listen for God's answers to my prayers or communication in whatever way, and also to be of service to help keep the doors open for others that want to.
Excellent. So it's become an integrated part of your uh, your commitment to God. Then.
Yeah, I look forward to it every week. Where before I would do it, just because I heard this is what I'm supposed to do, and I'll go do it and whatever. But really early on, first couple sessions, I really started to feel just a different level of peace. And it's a good physical manifestation of me being able to leave all my anxieties at the door and spend some time in Christ's peace.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to hear an honest assessment of your Eucharistic appreciation. Sounds like you have deepened in your faith. Um, uh,
Yeah, definitely. And I'm a man of faith, but I'm also a man of science and experimentation and evidence, and I've found the more that I've leaned into these practices and given them a shot with an open mind, the more I've seen actual and felt actual evidence of kind of the overriding word is peace. Really, I've been feeling for a while now, not constantly all day every day, but definitely overall much higher levels of peace and contentment and trust and patience in life, as a result. So yeah, um, being able to have that is is definitely very helpful to keep pushing me in the right direction. And that faith grows. It might not be something that, every minute of my life or anything, but I have the evidence in my experience to say, hey, this stuff is it's real. There's power in it, and it's helping me a lot.
It sounds like the Eucharist is a very powerful point and of interest of yours at the moment, and yes, it should be for all of us. I saw a recent post you were mentioning. Who is it? Carlos or the 15-year-old kid? Um,
Yeah,
what can you tell me
they're
about him and
at
what?
St. James. Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, what can you tell me about him? And apparently he compiled a list of Eucharistic miracles and.
Yeah, so this young man from Italy, born in 1991, Carlos Acutis, I believe is how you pronounce it. Um, Born in Italy in 1991, and from all accounts, had a great love of church and of the Eucharist growing up. And his parents were not religious, but anytime he'd pass the church, he'd want to go in and pray. And from all accounts, he was able to really share that love of God with everybody he came across, and converted a lot of people, I believe, including his parents, who were not real religious. And early on, he wanted to, what can I do to spread this love that I'm receiving? And he had this idea when he was 12 to try to find out and do as much research as possible of all the confirmed Eucharistic miracles from around the world, where the presence of Christ was felt and shown in a much more tangible, um, provable way. Uh, and he compiled as much as he could, and he wanted to put it on display. That was his kind of brainchild, and he did that for about 2.5 years, and unfortunately, he got diagnosed with leukemia early on, and he passed away when he was 15 years old. Um, but his display that he put together is going around, and it's at St. James Church until 6 o'clock today in Bay City. And I didn't have time to go through a lot of it, but it's just a nice catalog of all the confirmed events where some supernatural, uh, beyond our normal experience miracles have happened around the world over the years with the Eucharist. So yeah, I think it's really cool, and he's going to be, I believe he's going to be announced as the next canonized saint next month in the church.
Fascinating. So there has already been um, miracles that have been attributed to his intercession.
I don't know the whole story, but I would assume that if he's going to be canonized, then yeah, there I'm assuming there is. I just learned about this today, so I haven't been able to dig quite as deep into the story as I'd like to yet. But I figured, since it was, I posted about it because it was the last day it's going to be there at St. James, and I just figured anybody that was local that wanted to go check it out, get the word out there.
Excellent. Very good. Yeah. Um, yeah, I too. I found that the Eucharist was a very central um, point of that drew me to the Catholic Church. Not only the unanimous consent of the fathers that it is the flesh of Christ and that it becomes Christ and the Eucharist, but the entire theology that it's rooted in the Mass, as a representation and um, how we are, in a sense, entering into deepest kind of worship of God, which is to offer sacrifice. And I just remember Scott Hahn made this comment one time that, heaven comes down in the Mass, that Christ, who is crucified, which is clearly depicted in the dual consecration and the separation of the blood from the body, but Christ comes down as that lamb who stands before the Father as having been slain, and that all the angels and saints are with us, and we're praying together as a whole church. And it's just a very beautiful idea, very much different than a rock concert / TED Talk kind of experience that one might have at like a mega church or somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's interesting because to me, like, I agree 100%, and I think that the idea of that Catholic theology presents of the Eucharist being the literal presence of the body and blood was probably the hardest thing for me to, I don't want to say wrap my head around, but to, like, to jive with in the belief, because it's just so different than what I was brought up. Um, but the more and more that I began to accept that and open my mind to that idea, and then as you were talking about, like, the um, I love that term, representation, as opposed to the Protestant representation. Like, it represents something. In Catholicism, it's a representation. I love that idea that when I go to Mass and I receive this, it's not just me and the people that are, in the pews at that time and space. It's the church, it's the whole church. It's the angels and saints, and like, we are out of time and in to, the Last Supper. Um, it, to me, is a very beautiful thing, and I think that's one of the more attractive parts about the Catholic Church to me, is that feeling of unity beyond just present time and people. Um, I don't know. It's really comforting for me, and it is a very beautiful thing. I just love the idea that when I consume the Eucharist, that, like, the priest said it at Mass last Sunday, that, like, if you think about it, the blood of Jesus is flowing through my vein, through our veins right now. Like, that's, pretty heavy concept, and it's pretty powerful. And I find that, you know, uh, that something about that, whether I even really internalize it or not, um, as I've done that practice and gone to Mass every week, or tried to, I've failed a couple times, but since I really started saying yes, and was been able to to share in that sacrifice every week, it's been a lot of changes in my life, um, and like I said, it's a lot of positive evidence for me, and I want more of it. I really feel like I'm just barely even touching the tip of the iceberg in my understanding of it. Um, Christ is so hidden in the Eucharist and in the Scriptures, yet so present. Um, but it's not for us to all understand all at once, and I just know there's so much more there, um, and I want more.
So it's like we are coming to the ocean one thimbleful at a time.
Amen.
Yes, the as when I was a Protestant, I was very aware of the various views of the Eucharist, which basically on one end of the spectrum, it was just a mere memorial, and that's not to say that God can't give grace or anything, but the understanding of the emunesis, the Greek that Jesus uses for to remember, isn't like a pure remembering. It's entering into the history of it. It's
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and so when I began to recognize that, that was a huge catalyst for me. And Wesley's view was kind of similar to that of John Calvin, if I understand correctly. And that was that Christ was spiritually present with the elements, and that it was a means of grace. So we start to see this movement towards the Catholic view, and then we have the Lutherans who don't describe it as transubstantiation. They refer to it as consubstantiation through Luther's ubiquity doctrine, which unfortunately violates the Chalcedonian definition. But he had a stronger belief of Christ's presence, that his humanity, his body and blood and soul were also present along with his divinity. And it's interesting to see this whole kind of trajectory of thought, or this um, where one can swing from it's Christ, it's these elements are changed. This is the sacrifice of the cross. This is Christ who has been resurrected, and now we're going to eat his flesh and drink his blood so that we can life in us. You know, that we're going to consume the sacrifice as they ate the lamb in the Paschal meal. All the way back down to, there's nothing to see here. There's nothing going on. We might do this once every 6 months, but we're just
Right.
kind of we're just remembering the cross at the moment. It's not anything too serious. So, but glad to hear that you have really opened yourself up to the depth and the beauty that is Catholic Eucharistic theology.
Well, I think, and me too. And I think kind of along those lines, I was thinking about it as we were talking. Like when we say like we are, the body and blood, literal body and blood, flesh and blood of our Lord, is in this, is fully present in the sacrifice, and we are going to eat his flesh and drink his blood. Like when we say that without any context, like it sounds like it's so not, it's so counter to what anything that we've been, you know what I mean, that we as humans are brought up to. Like, what is this, like the Romans used to when they first heard about it, like, what is this cannibalistic cult, you know what I mean? And it's like
Yeah.
when I take it on just mere intellectual ideas, it's really, really hard to wrap my mind around. But I guess my whole theme with my conversion to start, but then my I don't even know what you would call it, but growth in my faith in the last couple of years is really just about being open and saying yes and taking that leap of faith. And then once I go down the journey, it reveals, it's revealed to me more and more. And I'll be honest, like for me with the Eucharist, like when I first converted to Catholicism, like I said, I believed it, and I agreed, but the amount of internal belief that I have now was not even close to being present. I don't even know if when I was first taking the Eucharist that I would even be considered would I consider myself today to have been in communion properly with Christ at that time, and completely believed everything that the church said. Probably not at that time, but but I was able to continue to say yes and keep moving forward, and being able to just be open and walk the path has really opened my, I don't even want to say open my eyes, because it's not something that I can see, but really opened my heart a lot. And it's crazy to me how much that's happened already, versus how far I have to go. And it's like, if it's this good already, like, I can't believe, or I can't wait to see how much it can grow if I can just continue to try to surrender more and say yes more, and look beyond all the cares and worries of this world, which is very difficult for me.
Yes, Catholicism. Give it a try.
Yeah, exactly.
Will
That's not
likes.
what I'm trying to do here, but I'm just speaking my experience. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Now, if I remember correctly, you said it was actually attending Mass and seeing its beauty and everything that was kind of like your initial attraction to consider the church.
Yeah, well, the initial attraction to consider it was, knowing what I'd seen in different TV and movies and stuff about, like, the choir, and just seeing the beauty of the church. But it was when I went to Mass um that really kind of hooked me in, because I was really struck, even though I wasn't included in everything, and I wasn't aware of all the ins and outs going on, and I felt a little awkward about that. The one thing that really struck me right from the beginning, as I was analyzing what was happening, is the Mass is all about what we bring to God. It's all about us worshiping God, rather than us going to this place to see what we can get out of it, which is where, all the places that I used to go, that's what it was about. Um, it has, obviously some priests are differently spoken than others, and some of them are a little more entertaining or whatever. But, like, it really doesn't have to do with, like, this personality of the priest or anything. It's all, even the priest is a steward of these gifts and these sacraments and sacrifices, and we're all bringing to it. Um, and that struck me instantly. And I went to Mass today, and it's the same thing. That it's set up, um, for our worship, not just our, um, I don't know what you not just our consumption, but what we bring to it, and that's really important for me.
Very good. Well, while you were talking, I was thinking that when we talk about the Mass, sometimes people are wondering, are you talking about the Novus Ordo? Or are you talking about the Latin Mass? I know you've attended both. I don't remember if we talked about um, since it's an offering to God. Having um, the I think it's called ad orientem, where the priest is actually facing the same direction we are, because
Mm-hmm.
we are kind of participating in his offering of things to God. And it can be a slightly different, there could be implications to these kinds of things. Um, you've obviously attended both. Some have argued that the Eucharist is like a diamond, and then the Mass is kind of like the setting. When it's surrounded by the gold, the shape, all of that stuff that gives attention to its centerpiece, so to speak. Do you have any personal preferences on those sorts of things, as you've experienced both?
So I do, and I want to start this by praying that I don't offend anybody or anything. I'm just going to speak my experience and my opinion on it.
Sure,
Um,
both
I
valid masses.
struggle. I struggle mightily with the Latin Mass, and I am glad that it exists, and I hope that it continues to exist, because I know a lot of people get a lot out of it. But for me, as I was, and I wasn't even going to bring this part up, but, like, when I was talking before about what I can bring to it, I find that it's not about being able to participate and so I can get out of mass, but me being able to really feel that that communion. Like, the songs are the songs are important, and the liturgy is important to me. To be able to speak a language that I understand, I feel disconnected when I can't. Um, so for me, this is just me once again. For me, it's critical that I'm able to be able to bring as much as I can to it and to feel a part of that. And so I've tried with the Latin Mass, and it is beautiful, but it's just it's not my my cup of tea, I guess, shall we say.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And to be honest, there are kind of pros and cons to certain things. I mean, if you went to France and you went to a Novus Ordo, you would have no idea what they're saying. But if you were accustomed to the Latin Mass, you could go anywhere in the world, and you would be able to participate in the same manner.
That's a
Um,
good point.
so there are pros and cons to these sorts of things. I know some people are very attracted to things more traditional. Maybe they like the Gregorian chant. They like the I don't know. They feel that maybe it's more solemn or more respectful or something like that, and that's great. And I'm really glad that they are indeed available. But like you said, some people, maybe their first real exposure to the mass would be helpful if they actually sort of could hear and more immediately receive, where it's not mediated through a missal that you're basically distracted because you're trying to read the English of what's going on. That feels kind of disconnected from what's going on up there, and you're trying to figure out what's going on up there. Like, why is he moving to the right side? Why is he moving to the left side? Where am I? You know, it could be a very confusing kind of experience that could maybe potentially distract from them understanding.
I also feel um, there's some theological things for me, or at least I don't know if that's the right word. This is probably going to be where I upset some people, so I apologize. It's not my intent, but I found that for me, a lot of the people that I've talked to that do strictly participate in the Latin Mass, and they have lots of different reasons for that. Um, I get a lot of this is just how what it reminds me of. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I just get a feeling of like Pharisaic vibes from the gospel, of all these specific rules and regulations that need to be done this way, and and they're very, very, very strict on that, and it kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth a lot of the times. um
Oh, you're referring to like very specific liturgical actions and things like that?
yeah, and I get that there's a reason for all of them, and I'm not even going to argue about those. I just it just seems like a lot of people that I've encountered with it seem to be focused more on the letter of the law rather than the spirit behind it, and it's kind of a turn off for me.
That's
So
an
I'm just being honest.
oh, that's totally fine. It's a very interesting perspective, because both of the masses have rubrics which are required to be followed. Um, so I'm not 100% sure what you're saying, but I actually thought you were going to go into the direction of, maybe a lot of people that you've met who do attend Latin Mass, maybe they're suspicious of um, Vatican II, or they think that the Novus Ordo is illegitimate, or
Yeah,
maybe
there's a lot of that as well.
very, or maybe seem to be more judgmental and rigid, to use the language of Francis. Um, did you ever find like maybe some of those things were kind of a turnoff, or did you recognize them as kind of trappings or a kind of a subculture or an ideology
I
that to
I kind
avoid.
of I kind of feel, and once again, it's not an accusation. It's just my perception of how I see it now. Like to me, it does have kind of that trappings. Just for instance, one of the things about, well, the Latin language, and once again, I'm not really super familiar with this, so if I say anything that's incorrect, feel free to correct me. But like somebody was saying, oh, we do it in Latin because that was, there's like this veil of protection or something that goes over it because it's the original language. And I'm thinking, well, it's not really the original language that all of this, that this was, the Bible and all these things were even written in and spoken. Um,
Right.
so some of the things make, I can at least have some arguments, to, I don't want to say poke holes in, but they don't all make sense to me. And then with that being that way, and how a lot of people are so very, very, very um, adamant about it, it definitely it definitely kind of feels off to me. But I don't want to I'm not trying to discourage anybody from it. I'm definitely not one of those people that think that it needs to go away. I think as long as there's priests that are willing to perform that rite and people that want to attend it, like I hope it stays forever. But it's not something that I would like to attend myself.
Oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, obviously the church provides these two different, the ordinary and extraordinary means to make the distinction that Benedict had introduced. I get what you're saying, and I think sometimes people are overly spoken with the way they say certain things. It's like um, it's true that the church had taught that if anyone say that the mass must be in the vulgar tongue, kind of let him be anathema kind of thing. And they'll take that language and then they'll say, "Oh, okay. Well, therefore, what Vatican II and those did was bad, and with the liturgical forms." But there's nobody's saying that it must be in the common language of people all over the world. No, nobody's saying that. The church made a prudential judgment that it could be beneficial to perhaps increase um, participation, because to be honest, participation in Mass really requires a certain amount of effort, awareness, focus, um, learning. It's something you kind of marinate in for a while before you kind of get the flow of everything. It's kind of like um, you've never watched football before. You don't know the language. You don't know what a
Right.
first down is. You don't want to. You don't know what calling an audible is. You don't know what a sack is. You have absolutely no idea what's going on because you don't know the structure. You don't know the rules. You don't know the language and its meaning, the things that are going on. Um, but one could either learn that, I've recently, I don't know if you like sci-fi or whatnot, but I've been watching through the Supernatural series lately, an older series, I think, one about maybe 15 or 18 seasons, and they're doing these exorcisms and stuff, and they're doing the Latin and everything, and I thought, you know, I remember, I think it was Jimmy Akin had a video, or it was either a video or an article, I don't remember, but he was talking about whether or not if is the use of Latin in exorcisms more powerful, kind of thing. And yes, sure, Latin was one of the three languages written on the sign that was posted above Christ's had on the crucifix, you know. So and it's also the language of the Latin Vulgate, which, according to Trent, was the official translation of the Catholic Church. And all that stuff is well and good. I think what happens is when people become very dogmatic, right?
Mm-hmm.
They become very dogmatic about things. And I think some of those things kind of get in the way of um, people who would be more receptive to a Novus Ordo. Um,
Yeah.
and I am glad that we have the what some refer to as the Mass of the Ages. That, you know, if you went to a Mass anywhere from 1960, 1970, all the way back to, you know, in the Latin Rite, it was always Latin as far
Mm-hmm.
as far as I could see. You know, some people like that nostalgia. Some people like that kind of historical continuity. We'll see if these liturgical reforms, you know, bear fruit, having both forms, um, and the wisdom of the church. But yeah, that of course was one of the things I wanted to ask about, because I know after I became Catholic, and I know we're kind of slowly moving away from the Eucharist, which I think is probably the highlight of our conversation so far, because you spoke so beautifully about it.
Oh, thank you.
Um, there, the longer that one, I think initially when one becomes Catholic, you know, they're learning the doctrines. They're maybe reading the Catechism. They're going through OCIA, or what was formerly known as the RCIA. You know, they're having fresh ideas, having new conversations, and it's usually primarily focused on like the central ideas of the faith, and then over time, as one persists in the Catholic Church, there can be some distractions from deepening the holy life, and it kind of sounds like you've taken the deepen the whole deepen your spiritual journey kind of mentality, which is absolutely awesome. But did you at all begin to encounter um, the more radical traditionalist Catholic, and then the very progressive liberal Catholic who dissents, um, and you see that even priests and bishops at times are kind of wrapped up into these sorts of things, and it can be very confusing to people if they kind of get stuck in that polemic of just debating those two ideologies, and when the day is done, you're just frazzled, upset, and you forgot to pray, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever find yourself drawn or influenced or distracted or even discouraged by some of the things that could occur within the church?
Well, as far as on those doctrinal issues and traditionals and stuff like that, I will say that I haven't. You know, I've heard people mention like the ultra liberal sect of Catholicism. I don't know if they're talking about like the Novus Ordo, like the, you know, what I would consider the just the regular, you know, modern mass, or if they're talking about like an even farther beyond that. Um, I haven't really encountered anything that I feel is extreme on that way, where it's trying to take away a lot of things. But I will say that some of the, you know, what I would consider extreme traditionalists, like, um, yeah, it's a big turnoff for me when I'm getting into the faith and I'm trying, you know, I want to do everything the right way or try continue to learn, and you know, I hear people calling, you know, certain people calling like the Pope the Antichrist and all this stuff, and you know, I'm just like, you got this is that's a little much, you know, and I understand that you want to be protective of what works for you, but for me, like, if there's no room for change or growth, like the church itself, even as we read through the Bible, as we read through Acts, like the founding of the church only preached to Jews, it wasn't open to Gentiles. If it wasn't for change and being able to, to hear the Spirit and move forward and make some changes and adapt, I I wouldn't be here, you know. And I'll say that if there wasn't the if it was only Latin Mass, I don't want to limit the power of God, but I would be very surprised if I ever converted into that, because it's so foreign to me. I like the fact that I was able to, even though Mass has a lot of different elements to it than a Protestant church service. Like I was able to at least learn because they're speaking in a language that I understand. Um, so so yeah, some of this stuff is discouraging for me. I'm not gonna lie. I try not to pay it too much heed anymore.
Right.
I just move forward with what's working for me. Um, but it's discouraging, and I just it saddens me that um, as as things stay so rigid, like I said, it goes back to me to reading the Gospels, and it tends to be, that's what I mean by when I said Pharisaic. Like, the Pharisees had their traditions that they made, um, that were extra biblical, shall we say, um, and they clung to them so hard that they were so focused on making sure the rules were followed the right way that they lost the complete spirit of God. They lost the whole point. And I'm not saying that all traditionalists are in that way, but it presents a danger, in my opinion, and it's a big turnoff for me. So yeah, I didn't mean to kick a dead horse, but
Oh no, that's fine.
that's
I
kind of how
mean,
I look at it.
everything that is in the 1962 Missal is what was developed in the Mass and held by everybody at the time. My heart does go out to people in that when the new Mass, the Novus Ordo Missae, was officially promulgated, the Latin Mass was completely banned, and everybody was forced to go to the new Mass. And this, for some people, was a culture shock. You have 50, 60-year-old people who've been going to a Latin Mass for X amount of years, and now they're told that they can't. um, I'm not saying that the new Mass is bad. I kind of wonder whether or not the implementation, along with that the implementation was too fast, and that the just completely banning what people had done their entire life was something that was prudent, given the kind of reaction that people gave to it. Um, I'm the person who likes, I do like both. Um, I don't attend a Novus Ordo, not because I think it shouldn't be in English, or necessarily because I absolutely demand that the priest be facing east, away from the congregation, because it's not a show for us. It's an offering to God. But the thing that I think bothered me the most is, now I don't know if you've experienced I'm sharing my own experience now. When I became Catholic, I was in the Diocese of Colorado Springs, and I was at I thought, a decent parish, and I had good Catholic friends there and everything. And when my mother passed away, I think it was back in 2009, I was forced to move back to Michigan to handle her estate. I was out in Colorado for Nazarene Bible College. And at that time, I was only attending a Novus Ordo, and I was perfectly fine. with the experience that I had in that parish. Um, Something happened when I came to a new diocese. Um, and I don't know if you've experienced any of this, but I began to recognize all kinds of liturgical abuses, really heterodox preaching from the pulpit. I became so discouraged that I didn't even want to go to Mass because I was just going to be annoyed and have to close my eyes and shut my ears up because there was I was seeing these things that the church required them to do, and they were deciding to dissent from that and engage in liturgical abuse and introduce novelties and omit things that were very important and required for Sunday, such as the recitation of the Nicene Creed and other things. I became so annoyed. I just, my Mass attendance was very low, and that's no disrespect to Christ. I just have a really difficult time with that sort of thing because when I became Catholic, I became committed to the church and its doctrine and its liturgy and its worship of God and its um, and its authority. I was thoroughly convinced of all of these things, and but then I encountered people who weren't like me, people who were perfectly fine with dissenting against the church, not believing that it's the real presence, or they're mocking Rome from the pulpit, or playing John Lennon's "Imagine" during communion, which is an ode to communism.
Mm.
Uh, I've had so many bad experiences as a Catholic within the context of the Novus Ordo and the priests who perform them, and this is anecdotal. I'm not saying this is universal. I'm not saying this is everybody else's experience. Um, this is what I personally encountered, and I hope nobody else does, and maybe they don't. Um, but I was very thankful when um, the bishop approved a Latin Mass in union um, with the diocese, because at one time the only way to go to a Latin Mass, if that's like, for example, you prefer the Novus Ordo, well, imagine a person who's just like you, but their preference is for the Latin Mass, and the only way that they could attend a Latin Mass is if and only if they would go to the SSPX, because maybe that's the only thing that's available in their area, which is a very strained relationship, um, because whether or not they're in communion is sus, right? Um, but and the thing is I didn't like going to the SSPX because their preaching were like they were always speaking against Vatican II, right? They were always it just seemed very ideological, and I thought, well, this isn't right either, and it's like, where am I supposed to go? Because I'm either hearing things that are so loose that and heterodox, and things that people are just doing whatever they want by pure will, against what the church's guidance and liturgical norms. And I I was once told that I was a Pharisee in the confessional. A priest called me a Pharisee because um, I struggled with that kind of environment. And I said, I have had a bad attitude towards priests in this diocese because of the fact that if they seem to just do their own thing. They're all of these liturgical abuses. They're willing themselves against the church to do whatever they want in the liturgy, to craft it for themselves, even against the norms, the germ and everything else, the guidance of the USS CCB. And yeah, he called me a Pharisee, called me a liturgicop, and I'm like, I'm in the confessional. I'm actually confessing a bad attitude that I have, you know. But apparently, he was one of those priests who are doing this, you know. And his reaction is to judge me and label me in the confessional. Now, I that's a long story. I definitely know that it is, but since we're talking about experiences that we've had that could be problematic or discouraging, did you ever experience anything like that in your journey?
No, and thank God that I haven't, because I would be very upset with some of those things that you were, mentioning examples. Um, I must be very fortunate. I started my Catholic journey in the Diocese of Lansing, um, and I went to parishes in East Lansing for my RCIA. And anytime, since then, anytime I try, I do a lot of traveling. I've been to mass in several different states and quite a different variety of things. And certain things are different, but the doctrine of what I believe means to be Catholic, I've never heard really anything stray from that. Um, so
I
I'm quite blessed, and I really love my home parish at St. Bridget in Midland. Never had a whiff of anything that goes counter to teaching that I was brought up with. Of course, like I said, that was within the last few years, so it's probably different than some things that other people that have been Catholic for a long time were literally brought up with. But yeah, I haven't seen anything like that, and I would be pretty upset if I had. So,
Oh my
um,
dude, I went to Blessed Sacrament in Midland once,
mm,
and there was this priest who said, "Well, on Mondays I like to go to yoga," and then he explained how spiritual it was to him. Then, in his garb, he gets down on the ground and shows us downward dog and explains how he channels the Holy Spirit through his body like energy.
yeah,
And
it's
I got
tough.
I got up and I left and I never went back. Yeah. Captain's like,
I
what?
will say, something up, now that you bring something up, there has been only one time where I've heard something from a priest that I wasn't sure, but it felt off to me, and it was actually and it wasn't at my parish. I won't name any names, but it wasn't at my parish. But I went to confession, and I confessed a sin, and I asked a question about it, and the answer I got back was, let's just say it was something that I wanted to hear, but I knew that it probably wasn't.
Yeah.
And I since went back through things and asked other people, and yeah, um, that was not correct teaching. But yeah, I haven't gone back to that particular priest for confession since, and I don't think I will. But so I
Yeah.
suppose, yeah, there was one time that I got some advice that I felt was not in line with teaching. But other than that, uh, yeah,
I
I really like it at St. Bridget's. I'll just say that.
all right.
To me, it's I'll say this real quick with it. To me, Like that to me is, I'm assuming you've at least been in there or know of it.
I have, and I was
Maybe.
also a catechist for a few weeks.
So you at least know, the how it's set up. The rectangle, pews all facing the same way, altar in the back. Um, yeah, that to me is traditional.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's not like a
Now, even though
horseshoe.
it's Novus Ordo, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure most people would not consider that, but like to me, when I think of a Catholic church, that's what I think of. You know, with that setup. Those other churches that have, and once again, totally up to whoever wants to do things however they want. Like, I don't think this is wrong, but the churches that are kind of like set up like semicircular in that and more widespread out, it feels like Protestant church to me. I just
Yes.
don't like it just doesn't just architecturally it just feels, I don't like
Yes.
it. So a lot of
It,
people do. A lot of
you're,
people really like it, but
you're
I'm not a fan.
I believe that you're not wrong there. That particular architecture has a very community kind of focused um, um, focus in the mass. So not only is the priest facing the people, but in a sense they're kind of facing each other, and it's kind of like the central point is watching the priest like he's doing some sort of show, like to make sure everybody could see what's going on or something. I don't know. It's like the architecture itself lends itself to a particular perspective or emphasis. Um, and I find that I don't like it. So obviously my line of question is not meant to be um, hey, let's talk about the beauty of the Eucharist, and now let's talk about all the things that could be to annoy people, to kind of be a wet blanket and annoying. But as one is a Catholic for longer and longer, one does get exposed to these different kinds of things, and I have wondered, how those things end up impacting other people, because I hear stories, um, and I don't remember that we had personally talked about it. It doesn't sound like you've encountered a lot of obstacles along this way. Maybe you had that one experience with confession. Um, I mean, I've had similar experiences. Had a priest during spiritual direction tell me that a lot of the things that the church teaches is bullcrap. Um, I didn't go back, but people have these experiences. But my point is, though, and I'll direct this in a different direction. Um, whether it's doctrine, liturgical, whether it's things that are going on in the church, um, what people end up doing with it, and things like that nature. Um, do you find that being Catholic and focusing on the positive aspects, what the church actually teaches, focusing on holiness, which you and I both come from a tradition that has a focus of holiness unto the Lord, right? Um, I don't know. I don't remember how long you said that you've been had been in the Church of the Nazarene, but holiness was basically the key theme of what it meant to be Nazarene. Sanctification, altar calls, um, entire consecration that brings about entire sanctification that leads to a life of entire devotement. That language that we've heard over and over again of being completely consumed by perfect love and all of that. We don't have time for, you know, these quibbles and, these preferences and things. We really want to dive deep and um, I know I had been distracted many times, but I continue have to come back to the way of holiness and focus on prayer and adoration and mass and the rosary and just really commit myself to God, because essentially, if we do that, God's going to take care of everything else in our lives. It's the first seek His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these other things will be given unto you kind of language. Um, I know that that's kind of talking about something else, but just in principle, that you put God first.
Mm-hmm.
You put God first, and you pursue holiness, and so so it kind of sounds like you haven't been distracted a lot, but rather you have really focused on deepening the spiritual journey, um, and we are coming to our hour. So maybe if you had any concluding remarks about uh, how the Catholic Church has really deepened that journey. It's taken you to another level. And you said it's just scratching the surface, but it's giving you a trajectory, of
Yeah,
holiness.
and I'm glad that you specifically asked that question because it's what I wanted to respond to um your last little bit there. That like the whole idea of holiness and stuff for me, like I I seek it, and it's something I want to I strive for, and I want to strive for more. I don't always strive for it. I'm a human and I make mistakes and I'm quite selfish. Um, but I got so frustrated in the Protestant church, for me personally, with this idea of entire sanctification, and basically saying like I have to be perfect. Um, and it's interesting how with the what the church teaches, or what I get for it, is like we do strive for that. However, my experience with the churches that I was raised in and where I'm at now, that idea was always something that like it was just a supernatural thing. Like if I just believed it hard enough, there's going to be a magic swish that makes me perfect.
Hmm.
And I never got that. I never came close to that. And it was almost like, for me it was like, here's the message, and now you go figure it out. We're here to help, but we don't really have a whole lot of specific direction for you. Just try harder. And I find that the thing that attracts me the most, or attracted me to the most, to the Catholic Church when I started getting into it, was there are, although there, how the things actually work are God's power and supernatural things, there are so many specific, tangible, actionable things that I can do to help guide me in that direction. There is stuff that is laid out. I can, pray my rosary. I can read my Bible and my study Bible. I can go to adoration. I go to mass. I can go to confession. I can, you know, do other ministries and all kind. There's just so much. I'm a practical guy, and you give me practical things that I can do, not to earn my way or anything like that, but you give me things that I can do to help, give me some, I don't know, guidance and guardrails, to move towards a direction. It's less ambiguous to me, and it's more. I don't want to say it's more attainable, but it's more attainable. It makes more sense to me, and the more that I surrender to doing those things that I didn't really want to do. I'm lazy. I don't want to do anything most of the time, but the more that I surrender to that and actually give them a chance, the more it works. And I find a lot of comfort in those tangible things. Um, I don't feel like I'm out on a lifeboat anymore. I feel like I'm in the ship.
That's a very beautiful way of saying it. One expression is that the church is the ark of salvation. It's been likened to Noah's Ark. I don't remember like the source of that, but it's kind of like that idea what you're talking about. I too, of course, had and maybe because we've had some similar backgrounds, the idea of entire sanctification is just too optimistic. I think the Church of Nazarene had been too optimistic. Wesley himself, I believe, if I remember correctly, once said that most people are not entirely sanctified, and most of those who are, it doesn't occur until the moment of death of ultimate surrender. And so that is very different than the kind of thing that we may have experienced, and that anybody at any moment could. And Wesley was optimistic that one could, but it just wasn't very likely. There's so many layers of surrender that you and I both know so well. There were so many layers of surrender. And yeah, sure, there's the unknown bundle, that Nazarenes talk about and all of that stuff. But in reality, people who have been so wounded by sin and have experienced a great deal of disorder and compulsion and obsession and many other things, that it's a daily struggle just to stay on the path, because there's so many different ways that we could, in word, thought, and deed, through my thought, through my most grievous fault, that we live a life of, and this brings us back to, it is Lent. We live a life of penance and repentance, and we really want to amend our life. We recognize how we have accepted in our life. We have allowed subpar goods, things that they seemed good in the moment, but they weren't a greater good. They weren't ultimately for our best, and we continue to suffer the consequences of those things, which can diminish and heal over time, but we carry them in a way where we could be very susceptible, without certain structure, without the avoidance of the near occasions of sin, given the right circumstances, right? The right set of factors, we could be so incredibly vulnerable and very easily lose our footing. But as you said, if you just surrender yourself to the process, attend to the means of grace, which that in itself could be very difficult for some people, to get out of the bed in the morning to go to mass. I don't want to go to mass. Why? Well, it's not because I don't love Jesus. It's I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to do anything.
Right.
These are things that we really struggle with, but it's if we can really just put ourselves in the means of grace, we can we can attend mass, go to confession, go to adoration, pray, read our Bible. They may seem like just another thing that we do that we may want to avoid because we don't want to do anything. But they're so life-giving that once one begins on that journey, once they will get the grace to continue. They will experience the power of God in their life. The Holy Spirit will use these things to shape and mold us and draw us so that we, instead of being habituated to these kinds of omissions and sloth, spiritual sloth, God will use these things to not only make it easier for us to attend to them, but to receive the grace that God has for us in the midst of them.
Amen. Amen. That's my story right there. You could have just said that at the beginning, and that would have been it.
Yes, I think we know each other quite well.
Yeah, and it's just it's I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful I found the path, or the path found me. It's just, you know, like I said, it just makes things clearer and makes things easier. And I am still and always will be a sinner. I'm not claiming to be any perfection, but I will say, when I talk about like the practical, tangible evidence of this stuff working for me, is like things that I used to really, really struggle with and never be able to stop. Like, it's not part of my life very much anymore, except for, stuff happens and I fall, but I'm seeing those results and feeling the peace that comes along with it. And I want, like you said, I want more. Um, I want to continue on this path, and yeah, just really grateful and really lucky. And yeah, appreciate you having the conversation. I didn't plan to talk about any of that specific stuff, so I don't know what really came out of my mouth, but I hope it was good.
Well, we've known each other for many, many years, and I've always been impressed with your willingness to surrender, because that's been something that I have struggled with the most. I'll sit here and whine and cry and why I'm struggling with this and that, and then it's like, well, did you go to mass? No. Did you remember
Yeah.
to pray your rosary yesterday? No. And it's like, well, if you will anything, just start willing these things, and just to start, be there. Don't like it, you know, that's surrender. If it's easy, it doesn't kind of feel like you're surrendering much, because you want to. I want to eat some chocolate ice cream. I'm not surrendering uh, my will to ice cream. It's just these are the things you need to do. Just put yourself there. You can hate it the whole time. Just
Mm-hmm.
just just be there. Just to start that. Believe me, God will use it. He will melt you. He will change you. It's fine. Suffer through it. And you've always been an inspiration to me in that regard, because I could be uh, quite stubborn. I can really isolate. I like some solitude, sometimes a little too much. And so my point is not to engage in self deprivation, but in a spirit of humility, recognize that you know it's always been the case that you have been an inspiration to me, and I'm always looking to you and thinking about myself and what I'm not doing. It's always a mirror in some sort, in some sense, because I hear the benefits of the things that you do, and I seem to have such a strong aversion to doing any of those things, and then I wonder why I struggle with all the stuff that I do, and man, I have to really look at myself again, and you've helped me a lot. So thanks so much, Will, for coming on and
Oh,
sharing
thanks
yourself
for
with me.
saying that. If half of it's true, then I guess I'm doing okay.
More than half of it's true.
And
Yeah.
you inspire me for your continued persistence and perseverance. Um, Keep that up.
Will do, sir. Will do. Well, thank you so
So
much. God bless, and maybe we could do this again sometime.
yeah, yeah. Hit me up anytime. Glad to
Yes.
do it.
Sounds great,
All
sir.
right.
God bless you. Have a great
Take care.
night.
God bless you.